Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Today, I got to play another game of the Vienna Game main line as black against my subscriber, the frog, the nutjob from New Zealand. And this game allows me to show you how to actually play against the Vienna Gambit. So, my subscriber is a real fan of the Vienna Game and Vienna Gambit, and why wouldn't you? It's super fun. So e4, e5, knight c3, Vienna Game. And now, as the player with black, you can potentially drive down a particular line knowing how the Vienna Game player is likely to respond. So here, you can play the Folkbier. So knight to f6, and basically you're baiting white to play the Vienna Gambit. So f4. Even when I'm playing the Vienna, I will always play the Vienna Gambit if I'm allowed to, because it's just such a fun line. However, if you're a wily black player, you now know you've got d5, the Vienna Game main line, which is almost kind of like an Achilles heel of the Vienna Gambit, because in this position, black is actually better. Black has some easy ways to play, and white actually has some trouble. So here, the game is really funneled into a very tight series of moves. So white here pretty much has to capture. So captures, capture back. And in this position, white has three options, and only really three good options. They can play the classical variation, they can play the modern variation, and they can play the Paulsen attack. Pretty much white only has three moves. And the best move actually for white is the Paulsen attack. It's what I would recommend. I think Gotham Chess recommends the Paulsen attack. And so very commonly you will see the Paulsen attack as black in this position. Now, let's switch over to my perspective with the black pieces. So, white now plays their best move, black is still slightly ahead, the Paulsen attack. And here, now I'm just going to get rid of this one, black basically has four responses. Three of the responses are kind of thematic moves against the Paulsen, insofar that these are moves that you probably will end up making anyway in the opening. The order sometimes doesn't matter all that much, and this is knight captures knight, and that's particularly good here when you have the opportunity to damage white's queenside pawn structure. You want to develop the queen's knight and the queen's bishop. And the goal is then to castle queenside. So these are three moves that are generally good, and these are three moves that can be made now. So the next move could be any of these three moves. It's perfectly fine for black, and it's about equal, so about 0, 0, 0. However, there is one move that is clearly better than the others, and that is f5. The immediate f5, defending the knight, and this is the bardeleben variation. Now, the bardeleben variation is named after a relatively interesting character in chess history, so Kurt von Bardeleben, and he's known for some pretty interesting antics. So apparently he was in debt quite a lot, and one of the ways he got sizable sums of money was that his name, von Bardeleben, so he was part of German nobility. And so there were apparently wealthy women who were willing to marry and then divorce von Bardeleben purely for the purposes of getting his noble name. And he got paid for it several times, in fact. And there's another interesting story of a game of Bardeleben versus Steinitz, where Bardeleben was known for losing the game, but not by resigning, but by simply just walking out of the tournament and never coming back. So von Bardeleben, very, very interesting. This move is named after him, and it's very, very good, possibly the best response in the Vienna Game main line against the Paulsen attack. Now here, what is likely to happen? So you might think, well, doesn't white have en passant? Well, they do. However, if they do en passant, what you have now is knight captures the pawn back. And so now you've got a double defense of your d pawn. And black here is perfectly fine. So look at the evaluation about, so heading towards -1, I think it's about -7, minus 0.7 on higher depth. And this is perfectly good. And basically what black wants to do is now just to develop normally. So this is, so if white gives a en passant capture, they're actually worse for it. So here, the best move for white is actually to place more pressure on the black knight, so with d3. But here, the moves for black is fairly simple. Remember what I said? If you get an opportunity to damage white's queen-strike structure, you should. Now that knight is no longer defended by the queen, and so you can straight up capture. White will have to capture back. And again here, these are the potential follow-up moves. You can potentially push d4. Remember the thematic moves. Play the knight, develop the queenside bishop, short castles, develop the queen. So just normal developing moves for black, and black has a very good position. So this is pretty much the way to play against the main line with the bardeleben variation. Now, what actually happened in this game? So I played the bardeleben variation, and the interesting thing is I actually learnt this move from my game that I played against a Battle Chess DOS. It was obviously in their opening library. I played white and the main line, and the computer, the scumbag, used the bardeleben variation against me. So here, my opponent, so my froggy opponent, decided to capture, and that's automatically already a mistake. You can see already sort of worse than -1 because after this move, I get to capture back. This is, you know, all protected, very strong. Queen's out, unclear exactly why it's out, and I've opened up the D file for my queen. So already this is looking pretty good for black. Now they obviously have to move the queen out of the way, so you know I win some tempo. I now develop knight normally, and unfortunately, in their rush to try to capture the center back, normally a reasonably good idea, and maybe they're thinking, well, you know, if I capture back with en passant, that doesn't seem like it's particularly bad, bad for white. Can you see what is the best move now for black, and why this was just a terrible blunder? Can you find it? Well, the problem is that the king and queen are on the same diagonal, which is always a little bit risky, because now I've got bishop to b4, pinning the queen to the king, and that queen is lost. So they unpin, captures. I take the pawn, because obviously very, very happy to trade pieces now that I'm completely up material, or up a queen. That was a pretty good move. So long castles, you know, ostensibly placing pressure on the pinned piece. But one of the things with when playing black in the Vienna game main line is to always look for opportunities for the queen to go to h4, because if the king is there, there's check. In this case, after long castles, I have queen to g5 with check, which is like a get out of jail card. It allows me to move the knight out of the way, even though it's pinned. So with check, king moves, bring the knight out of the way, and I'm perfectly fine. So here I potentially can take, I opted not to do that. It felt like, you know, I want to potentially get the king out of the way. Let's not be too greedy. I think that was potentially actually the best move. So they moved that forward, but I'm fine with that. Want to get the king safe. And now I bring the rook over. I'm thinking they'll capture, and then I'll capture back. So move the queen back towards the king side where there could be an attack. And they have to do something here because that is back rank mate. Unfortunately for my subscriber, they were potentially thinking, oh, look, you know, I could ignore the threat on my rook if I put a greater threat on your queen. Except the biggest threat isn't just the capture of the rook. It is checkmate. And so rook captures rook, checkmate, back rank mate, always keep an eye on your back rank. Good game, GG. My big takeaway from this game is that it is worthwhile to learn how to play the Vienna Game main line from the point of view as black. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.